you for joining us for this week's edition of Can We Talk? My name is Petra Gambles, and with me is Adam Hernandez running for city mayor.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, Adam, tell us why you're running.
Yeah, so back in the summer of 2020, I got involved in community advocacy. I was born and raised in East Lubbock, and I wanted to get involved to try to make some better outcomes for our community. And so in the process of doing that, over the last 2.5 years or so, I was asked by community members and community leaders to run for mayor. It wasn't something that I had ever considered before that.
So you hadn't considered it before, and so you just felt the pressure and you said yes to the call.
Well, it wasn't, I guess it was pressure, but I think it was a good pressure. To me, when I first got involved in community advocacy, it was literally just to use my time, energy, experience, and skills to serve my community. That's really all, and remains my only goal in this whole thing. And so at first I thought people were just being nice. And then after a while, it started to become sit-down interventions. And them at that point understanding how my mind works, laying out that there was a clear path to victory and the political landscape of Lubbock and things like that. And so at that point, when it started to become serious conversations like that, it made me consider it. The only thing I took from it is that those folks had confidence in me to do this job and were basically asking me to do it because they felt that that's where I could best serve. And so that's why I answered the call.
So people having confidence in you, but hey, you got to have confidence in yourself to get your name on the ballot. Mm-hmm. So tell us what you're standing for.
Well, definitely what brought me into this whole thing, which is working to revitalize not only the historic East Lubbock neighborhood, but also historic North Lubbock and Central Lubbock as well. If we can do that, we can unlock so much value that we're not getting out of our city, and also just make people's lives better. And I think that it's great to have the growth that we've had in the southwest of the city, and I'm not opposed to that. I don't think anybody's opposed to that. But we should also have growth in our historic areas of the city. There's no reason why those should remain stagnant or decline in some cases. And so that's one thing I think a lot about, and so there's a lot mixed up in that. I do attend all of the neighborhood association meetings on a monthly basis and have this whole time. And so some of the situations that a lot of communities are deal with animal control and the animal shelter, solid waste and code enforcement with illegal dumping and things like that. So looking at how can we solve those things because they've been around for so long. And then a big one would be the unfortunate recent rise in youth gun violence. And a lot of that is tied to drug and gang culture. And unfortunately, we're seeing kids as young as 10 years old getting into that lifestyle, and I was one of those kids. I was never in a gang, but I had a rough start in life, and when I was 10 years old, I started hanging out. And so you get into all kinds of stuff, and if you don't have guidance or you don't have certain things in place for these kids, it's easier for them to fall into that. And so have been working with LPD and other organizations, and will continue to do that. If I'm elected, obviously I'll have a little more power to do something about it, but I would continue to try to work on that, not just to study the issue, but to actually try things.
Okay. And so loving, hearing about that, but I wanted to pivot back to preserving the history of Lubbock. Why is that really important to you?
Well, it's important because, this is where we live. This is where my heart is. I know a lot of people in East Lubbock, North Lubbock, Central Lubbock, great people. This is where our homes are, and your home is going to be your biggest asset in life. And so it's important for us to have more home ownership, especially in our own communities. And it's not to stay separated, it's to just empower ourselves. And so that's one part of it. But it's also important for the city because the city, I just met with the chief financial officer of the city this morning. And so he'll tell you what runs your city is your taxes, your sales tax and your property tax. And if you have any area in your city where the property taxes are depressed for whatever reason, which there are many in our community, then that's actually taking money away from the city budget as well that can be used for all sorts of things, parks, health, public health, public safety, all these different things. And so it's really a big impact if you just have areas stagnating or declining in your city.
I see. And so what are some of the other things that you're passionate about and how you want to see Lubbock come together and become more of a oneness?
Yeah, throughout my advocacy career, if that's what you want to call it, over these past 2.5 years, a big part of that for me has been uniting folks, mostly around the fact that if any one area were to come out in full force and vote on something, they really couldn't make a change. And that's any one area. If you take East Lubbock, North Lubbock, Central Lubbock. But if we were to come together, you have the numbers to actually move some things around with your vote and things like that. And so that's how I look at this whole thing. And I guess my long-term vision for the city would be one of us growing into the role, more into the role of what we already are, which is the capital of the Plains. So we're the economic, academic, and healthcare hub for the South Plains region, which is the size of the state of South Carolina. And so I think that we should step more into that role, not only for the city itself, but also for the region. And so what I think about a lot in terms of that, I guess the main thing, the critical thing, is our water future and making sure that Lubbock has water to not only keep us growing, but just to maintain what we have. And so in order to do that, that will take partnerships across the board from the state to the county to the city. And so that's kind of how I look at the future.
Okay. Well, tell us about your schedule this week. Election day is coming up.
Yes, Election Day is May 7th. Early voting starts April 25th. So we've officially kicked off campaign activities. You'll see people block walking and putting out door hangers and things like that, and we'll be doing meet and greets. We don't have anything meet and greet wise scheduled this week. I've got a lot of meetings, but nothing meet and greet wise.
So more so just meeting, behind the scenes, like you said, with the city of Lubbock and all of that, with the powers that be.
Right. So a lot of what I do and have done for the past 2 years in my advocacy work is to keep up with City Council, what's going on with City Council. So I've attended most of the City Council meetings over this time, except for maybe a few. I go to the LEDA meetings, which is the Lubbock Economic Development Alliance, and that's also mixed with Market Lubbock, which is their task is to kind of be a catalyst for growth here in Lubbock with businesses or bringing people here to start families and lives here. And then again, meeting with folks like the Chief Financial Officer. I'll be meeting with the City Manager, sitting down with him. Also, we'll be sitting down formally with Chief Mitchell of LPD, Chief Fogerson of the Fire Department, and just trying to really learn as much as I can about how the city operates.
Okay. And so let's just say that it's Election Day and the results are in and you come out on top. What's going to be your top priority?
Well, my top number one priority would be first and foremost to create a committee or a task force to look at the issue of our youth and to really aggressively try to come up with solutions, try to come up with things that we can try to get some better outcomes there. That would be one of the first things. The next thing would be to start to actively work to address those issues we talked about with those certain departments. So the tough part here is that part of that is a problem with resources, and that just takes a little bit of creative budgeting. We can move things around and find budgeting for certain things, or there could, for instance, be grants for other things. It would just depend on what it is. So that could be handled relatively easily, I think. But the other side of it that's tough to deal with is the lack of employees. So for instance, the Solid Waste Department has I think the last time I talked to Miss Haney was like 11 vehicles there sitting empty. They have no drivers for them. And so you have similar problems in code enforcement and animal control and parks and things like this. And so what I would do, one of the first things I would do is have the city start to institute perhaps monthly job fairs, not only to fill those jobs for city departments, but it would also be an opportunity for other businesses. We could do this perhaps at the Civic Center, where you could have lots of businesses, and just so that folks know what jobs are out there. And because the other side of those jobs is that some of them are going to be high turnover. It's just the nature of it. So for instance, going back to solid waste, the issue there is that you go to get a CDL to drive the trash truck, right? Well, the city can't pay what, say, the oil field can pay. And so they're losing a lot of folks, and that will just always happen, unfortunately. And so because you're going to have that high turnover, and because you need so many employees, if you look at Covenant and UMC, Covenant itself needs nearly 500 employees that they don't have in these positions. And so, there's a lot of openings out there. There's a lot of opportunity. And so I think that could address it.
Okay. So we're also dealing with the great resignation that has happened nationwide, and that is certainly impacting us here in Lubbock. And so this week you're going to be busy, I guess, having, the meetings behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. And so what message do you want to give those who are watching this segment?
My biggest message to everybody is, if anybody out there would like me to be the next mayor of Lubbock, we can make that happen. The only thing that's going to stop that from happening is if we don't show up. And by we, I mean everybody who would like me to be mayor. There's going to be a certain part of the city that's just simply not going to vote for me, and that's okay. You can't win them all. But if you take that number of people, whatever that number is, the rest of the people in the city are many more than that. And so what we're seeing in election cycles is that Lubbock has plenty of registered voters. There's 260,000 people in Lubbock. We have somewhere like 184,000 registered voters. Only about 20,000 or so of those are showing up to the polls. And so when you do that, you have a very small part of the population that is choosing the leadership 9 times out of 10. And so we can change that. We can change it in this election cycle. And again, it's as simple as everybody showing up to vote, and the math is on our side. And I just hope everybody out there takes that to heart. I hope everybody understands how important this opportunity is and what a unique time it is in our political landscape, which maybe we can get into at a different date. But this is possible, and we can do it if everybody shows up. So thanks.
Well, Adam, we certainly thank you for joining us on today in the segment of Can We Talk? And so everyone, go out and vote on May 7th.